That takes special time.
Tell me when it's ready, Nick.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first cabinet back after the quieter period of August. I hope those of you who took a break had a good and peaceful and a great time. It's good to be back to it. A lot happening, not just in the council. We know there's lots happening all over the place. It's a very exciting time, isn't it? Anyway, so good.
No defections, Peter?
Sorry?
No defections?
Not yet, no.
You're welcome, mate.
Yeah.
Certainly not to you.
We can escort you around the table if you want. Yes, welcome to Cabinet. Can I also welcome anybody who may be looking in today as well, or in any future point. Apologies for absence. We have apologies from Phil Murphy, who's just finishing off his break and will be back with us very shortly. So apologies from him. Any other apologies, Francis Taylor?
Yeah, Francis Taylor and Joe Watkins have given apologies.
And Joe Watkins, thank you. Okay, so just to do some introductions for those at home, really. I'm Peter Fox, leader of the council. I'll ask Cabinet colleagues and other members to introduce themselves.
Bob Green, Deputy Leader and responsible for enterprise and land use planning.
Richard John, Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Mon Life.
Sarah Jones, Cabinet Member for Social Justice and Community Development.
Hi, Penny Jones, Cabinet Member for Social Services, Health and Safeguarding.
Paul Jordan, Cabinet Member for Governance.
Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services.
Dimitri.
Councillor Dimitri Petrini, Leader of the Labour Group.
Okay, thank you very much. And can I welcome Maureen Powell, elected member, who's joined us as well. That's all elected members, and welcome to all our officers. And please, officers, if you take part in the debate or discussions, could you just introduce yourselves? Thanks very much. Okay, declarations of interest. Are there any at this point? If not, if you find one through the meeting, as usual, can you declare it verbally and then fill in the appropriate form from there? Okay, let's go straight on then into the bulk of the items, and starting item 3, and that is to first 3A, and that's to discuss countryside sites of and the 106 contributions. And you'll see, I'll introduce this in Phil's absence, and it's to recommend to full council inclusion of a capital funding in the 1920 capital budget, and to recommend the utilisation of accumulated 106 balances to a number of countryside green infrastructure projects in the county. You'll see then in 2.1 the sites of where the 106 monies would have flowed from, and then you'll see in 2.2 the projects that money has been allocated to, some 21,000. And plus you'll see in 2.3 then there is an unallocated balance of 23,000 from the Kai Meldon development in Gilwern, and that is scheduled to be part funding the Clydach Ironworks improvement scheme, which is referenced a little bit further on in the agenda. Members, I don't need to go through every element. This is a pretty straightforward report. Mike Moran is with us today to give, and Matthew Lewis to give us more details on this, obviously where the 106 are flowed from and where the monies are going to be spent as outlined there in 2.2. One of them is the mega walking routes project, the access and promotion of that, the Caldergott Castle management plan implementation, and Warren Slade woodland management as well. I know Dimitri's going to question a bit later on about walking routes, and I'll answer that one at that point. We can give you some useful information on that as well. So, colleagues, anything anybody wants to add at this point, or can I invite Mike or Matthew in if you need to share anything, or do you want to?
Thank you. Not a great deal really to add to what you've already said. The small sums, as you say, come from various different sites. The Sawmill House and the site were compensation for loss of grassland hence why the proposal then to spend that on the creation of wildflower rich grassland in Castle Meadows.
Yeah.
So that's a direct, and there's a minimum 0.4 hectares that needs to be delivered in order to meet the requirements of the section 106.
Yeah.
The mega brewery money was a payment which was specifically for access improvements around mega, and we've been able to combine that together with some money from the Living Levels Partnership Scheme and a contribution from the Community Council in order to update and provide some more public information around walking routes from the centre of Mega Village, and that's a sort of subcomponent of a much wider set of improvements that have been delivered through the Living Levels Landscape Partnership.
Okay, thanks.
The Warren Slade one is relatively straightforward because that was some money that was specifically set aside in the section 106 for woodland management at Warren Slade Wood at Chepstow, which is, as you probably know, on the Wales Coast Path, and that's to do a combination of resurfacing paths. There's a viewpoint there which you might know which looks over the railway line. That needs the fencing there, needs replacing with something a bit more robust because it keeps getting knocked down, and there's a safety issue there in terms of the slope down to the railway below. So there's a combination of works basically to just improve that. And then the final element, which is the Clithic Ironworks improvement scheme.
Yeah.
We recall in January, council approved the acquisition of what was roughly referred to as the Cemex site in order to lay out improved site for at the end of the roadworks scheme.
Yeah.
And so this is the match funding, which is matching £128,000 worth of grant from Visit Wales, which will hopefully be sufficient time to deliver
Do the whole project.
food scheme.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks, Matt. Anything any members want to add? Yeah.
Can I just say that from a selfish point of view, I really welcome that we now own this Cemex site, because for people that aren't familiar with this particular site, the only access is currently over a grade 1 listed very important old iron bridge, and this will mean that we've got access into the site without going over that listed bridge, so it really is welcome.
Okay, great. So before I go to the recommendations, I know Dimitri, you had a question.
Yes, was any improvements considered for walking and cycling on the B4245?
Yeah, well, Mike, I know you shared some information with me yesterday, which perhaps I'll let you share now. That looks at some positive things in the train which can address that. I mean, there's a clear issue which was raised at council as well, and a motion was passed to see there's some progress being made. So I'll let you explain, Mike.
We didn't consider any contributions from these 106 figures because they were given specifically for ecology and biodiversity improvements. In relation to the walking and cycling routes, we have tried to secure some improvements to that through the S106 mechanisms. So off the back of the Rockfield Road development, there is a contribution, I think, of £70,000 to go towards that scheme. And there is also a planning application in relation to the conversion of some barns at Green Farm, I think it is, in land behind Roggett.
Yeah.
And what we've done there with the applicant is we're actually securing land which is 3 metres wide to install the footpath when we have the funding to do that.
Good.
So we're not going to do any works, but we are gradually moving to the point where we could commit a scheme, because obviously a scheme like that would require quite a lot of facilitation, and I think the total budget back in 2012 when we did a feasibility study was about £300,000 for the work. Yeah, so we are moving in the right direction for that, but we're not quite there yet fully.
Do we have a time frame, if I may? Because a cyclist was nearly killed a few weeks ago, and there was another collision a few weeks before that, where a cyclist found in the hedge, basically with serious injuries. I think just survived, I'm led to believe. So we have no time frame of.
Not that I'm aware of personally, but this would probably be through highways.
I was going to say we could have done with a highways officer to see how things are progressing, because I mean it was part of the motion in council. We want to see action on pleas and monies now, and some of the planning actions
Yeah.
are starting to facilitate the way for that to happen. But I don't know what the time frame is, and I don't know if anybody else here does.
We could certainly ask colleagues in.
Yeah,
for an
I mean,
estimate of that
I think-
and get back to the member direct if that would help.
All members are very keen to see progress made on it, just for some of the reasons that Demetra picked up and we've seen before. It's a hell of a dangerous stretch of road, and we want to see progress made finally on that. And because I was always wrestling with how we're going to address which side of the road you're going to put the path when it comes round Lambie Angle there.
Yeah.
Because you can do one side, but you've either got to cross the road, or you've somehow got to acquire land to make sure that you can keep it on the same side of the road. It's just that bit around the farm there. So that sounds quite positive that bit can be sorted out.
Yeah, my understanding is that if you're coming from the direction of Corby Dock towards Dundee, it will be the left hand side of the road, and it's that section there, which is obviously
That makes sense.
quite a dangerous section of road.
I think that's where the incident took place.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
well, that, if, yeah,
Because once you've ran that bend, just the stacks of room all the way then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much. Sorry, Richard, do you want to come in on it?
Yeah, I think we have got a lot of progress to make in terms of making it easier for people to walk and cycle around our county, but it is very difficult given the geographical nature of Monmouthshire. It's inevitably very expensive to put these walking and cycling routes in, but it's really important. But I really think the Welsh Government need to be, now they've declared a climate emergency, they really need to be putting their money where their mouth is and putting some significant investment into active travel for rural areas as well as the cities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, hopefully that will flow. There'll be money flowing shortly, and we'll be a beneficiary. Being a big rural county, we expect to see some, won't we?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move to the recommendations for this report then in 2.1. I'll zip through these quickly. So the council agrees to a budget of 21,689 being created in the 2019-20 to fund the following projects. That this is funded by corresponding contribution and Section 106 balances held by the County Council from the Section 106 agreements in relation to the following developments. So they are the AB InBev brewery site Mega, from the Raglan service site, the A449, the Little Mill sawmill site, and the Warren Slade Wood in Chepstow, and that funding be allocated to the following projects: a mega walking routes access and promotion, Caldecott Castle management plan implementation, and the Warren Slade woodland management. And then the final recommendation that the unallocated balance of £23,020 from Colin Meldin be used to part fund the Cladach Ironworks improvement scheme. So are we all in favour of that recommendation? Those recommendations? Yeah, great. Thanks very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, digital infrastructure action plan. And that's Sarah.
Thank you, Lisa. The paper you have in front of you gives me a very welcome opportunity to update you on our digital plans. So the report you've got in front of you is very much an infrastructure report. It's focused on what we as a council can do to really bridge the clear digital divide that exists in our communities, and that clearly risks putting us at a disadvantage compared to our capital region neighbours. So we're looking at the digital deprivation rate within our county, currently standing at 12.5%. Now, we know that might change given the current open market review, but clearly there will still be challenges because that figure is still going to be a lot higher than it is for our neighbours. I know many of us around this room have been really frustrated by the Superfast Cymru rollout process. Many of us would have been individually contacted from concerned residents and businesses, those of communities that had stranded assets, so they saw work happening that wasn't completed under Superfast Cymru 1, and then the delay in getting to round 2 of Superfast Cymru 2. There was a gap of almost 2 years where the open market review came into place. We all know and understand what those challenges are for our communities in terms of digital deprivation, whether it be from us as a council in terms of the challenges we've got around digitising our own services, whether it be from an individual household or resident perspective in terms of the impact it has on them individually, or whether it be on businesses and those people that choose to work from home, or whether it be the wider strategic impact in terms of the impact on the strategic imperative under the Cardiff Capital Region. Now, we've seen some real successes from the team and from Monmouthshire County Council in terms of utilising existing funding. So, for example, the Rural Community Development Funding, we've managed to tap into that to really identify ways in which we can plug some of those infrastructure gaps that are in place. But we know there are some challenges in terms of that funding, and we need to explore that further. to show ourselves to be a proactive council that's working with partners in government to try and bridge the digital divide that exists in our communities. It's not just about our own individual aspirations as a council, it's also those collective aspirations as the Cardiff City region and the work that's undergoing for their own digital plan. So in terms of what we're asking you as Cabinet to approve through the digital infrastructure plan, it's about us having a very clear policy position, which then gives us that mandate and encourages broadband providers to install full broadband throughout the county, full fibre broadband. It's about establishing a strategic broadband working group. It's about considering commercial loans to companies that may look to address that digital divide or digital deprivation that exists in some of our communities. And it's also looking more broadly at opportunities to install 5G or LoRaWAN infrastructure within the council area. So you've seen that the report, if you look through it in terms of the consultees, it's been through wide level of engagement and consultation. The Economy and Development Select Committee has endorsed this and has encouraged us to adopt it. And it's had a great deal of engagement that's based on those conversations that we regularly have with our communities on an ongoing basis because of the challenges that exist. I will, as I always do, but I want to thank officers, particularly Kath and Mike, because they've done a huge amount of work here. They're having to firefight because of the challenges we've been left with, the impact because of a failure under the Superfast Cymru programme that's been delivered by Welsh Government. We've had to firefight and go out there and try and deal and address some of these problems. And I really believe that this action plan is about that proactive approach that we're taking to the failures that we've been left with from a national government, Welsh Government perspective. What's in here, hopefully, the proposal that's here, the recommendations that are here, is going to help us to deliver not just against our own corporate plan, but will also support many areas of our social justice strategy. And the ambitions that we've set ourselves to try and support our communities and reduce inequalities. So I hope that you can support the paper that's in front of you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And thanks for Kath's here as well. And Kath, anything you want to add to what Sarah said? You know, we have got to be proactive. It's a key issue for us, and we haven't had the progress we wanted or expected to see from government over recent years, and so we need to do things ourselves and being proactive, consideration of the commercial loans and things like that to promote opportunities to fill some of these gaps is really important. I have to recognise how the shortfall we've got in infrastructure in Wales. I mean, I was in Norway only a couple of weeks ago on the top of a mountain, and yet I had perfect 4G. And I could go and I could, you know, there was not a mast or anything anywhere. I know we're talking more Wi-Fi connection here, but if you've got a good 4G database and network, you can get over some of those gaps. You know, how are countries like Norway in all of its mountainous region around the fields managing to supply high quality 4G connectivity, and we can't even get it. I was in Llantwit Major having some lunch on Sunday, and I couldn't get 4G in one area. Now, hang on, there's something not right, is it? So, you know, this country has got to pull its finger out in some of these areas. So I'm pleased that we've been proactive and trying to fill some of those gaps ourselves. Colleagues.
I've experienced very similar issues. There are great swathes of my ward, indeed even village, the centre of a couple of villages in my ward where you can't even get phone signal, let alone 4G, and it's really frustrating. But I think Sarah and the officers deserve an awful lot of credit that although we're rural areas that seem to be last in the pecking order as far as Welsh Government's concerned, we're not just going to sit around and moan about it. Sarah and the team have been doing a great deal of work on it. I think that's fantastic, and they deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah, I don't like this. I mean, I wouldn't want to not acknowledge some of the fantastic efforts that have happened to this point. This is about then exploring it that step further, knowing that we've probably come as far as we can into the government funded programmes and the Superfast Cymru. So this is a real opportunity to explore innovative other approaches. Yeah. But there's been some fantastic projects and initiatives that we've backed and supported in partnership that I think need credit as well, that have happened so far.
Yeah. Okay, colleagues.
Yes, I really welcome this in my ward, because where I've got real pockets of deprivation, it's families that can't, you know, help their children with the homework. They haven't got good connectivity, and yet we've had this major road scheme going through, which should really have given us the opportunity to make sure that we upgraded all those areas, but it hasn't happened, which has been a great disappointment to me, actually. So I really welcome this move.
Okay, anybody else? No? And through the, obviously, we talk about the investment committee and the source of the loans and things further on, because that's key. And we recently took a report from council, didn't we, to enable that to happen going forward. So I know, Dimitri, you've got some questions around that. Yeah, I think we altered the nature of what the investment committee can do to enable this sort of thing.
Yeah, to talk about.
I'm not sure. Anyway, do you want to?
Yeah, it's really pleasing that we're now taking a proactive stance. That's really good. Number 3, how are we what's this policy process we're going to do to scrutinise any commercial loans we give to companies, given it's the taxpayer subsidising them?
Well, we're now taking a proactive stance. Yeah, we've taken a proactive stance for the last few years, but this is a proactive stance in relation to the outcome of Superfast Cymru, which is now undergoing its final part of its OMR. So this is specifically a proactive approach in response to that. But in terms of the question around the commercial strategy, because that's what's going to be used in terms of having to assess the loan provision, we'll utilise our own commercial strategy, which we adopted as a council last year in 2018. Then the business case will come forward and it'll be presented, due diligence will be undertaken then, and then it'll be undertaken against the commercial framework, which again has come out of the commercial strategy. Once that's happened, I believe that will then get presented to the investment committee. The investment committee then has the opportunity to consider the proposal and approve as it sees fit. In terms of then that ongoing monitoring and scrutiny of that proposal, I assume it will go to the regular annual review of the investment committee when investment committee looks to review the proposals it's given funding to.
To be clear, so if Dimitri referenced public subsidy to businesses, if this was running through the investment committee, that is via the investments committee borrowing opportunity, not through public subsidy.
Yeah, borrowing on the public.
Paul Matthews, Chief Executive, we're not giving grants.
No.
If the proposition is put to investment committee and investment committee chooses to support it, it will be on the basis of a commercial loan.
Yeah.
The rate that we look to recover on that loan will be bespoke to the particular venture, the particular deal, the particular level of risk. But we will not be looking to introduce public subsidy.
No.
To be clear though, if they default, the burden is back on the taxpayer.
Well, I guess my response to that is that the investment committee will have to be clear on the asset base that it is securing any loan against. So default is always a potential risk in commercial activities. It's the mitigation strategy that the investment committee applies to any potential loan that should give it either confidence to proceed or not, as the case may be.
So due diligence, obviously everything that is applied to any of these, however big or small they are. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would thoroughly approve of this, because if by giving a commercial operator a commercial loan, we can ensure that Monmouthshire is higher up the pecking order in terms of getting these services installed for our residents, then I think that's a good use of a commercial loan under these circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's take the recommendations. Right, there's a whole, I better wander through these, I suppose. Right, the recommendation for Cabinet to approve the attached digital infrastructure action plan, and in doing so to also approve the following recommendations that the council will: 1, take a policy position to proactively encourage broadband providers to install full fibre broadband infrastructure in the county, and 2, to establish a strategic broadband working group to ensure a proactive approach is taken in ensuring all necessary internal council processes are expedited to enable broadband providers to move at speed. Yeah, and 3, consider commercial loans to companies wishing to progress digital infrastructure projects within the county that will address digital deprivation issues. And 4, fully consider any opportunities to engage with funding opportunities to install 5G and I don't know how to say that, infrastructure within the county where there is a basis of evidence of need, opening up the county as a regional testbed and pathfinder for the variety of applications likely to be developed as a result. So we're all in favour of all of that and the plan, obviously. Yeah. Thank you very much. That's carried. Thank you, Kath. Okay, let's move on to Public Service Ombudsman annual letter. Paul Jordan.
Thank you, Leader. The Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, the role is to consider complaints about public service providers in Wales and to consider complaints that members of local authorities have broken the code of conduct. The Ombudsman has requested that Cabinet considers the complaints and the Ombudsman has received, and the Public Services Ombudsman Wales Act 2019 has now been introduced. The Ombudsman sends every council an annual letter which provides a summary of the complaints received and investigated. This compares the number of complaints against the local authority which were received and investigated by the Ombudsman during 2018-2019 with the local authorities average during the same period. The Ombudsman's annual letter provides a breakdown of the number of complaints about the local authority broken down into subject categories. It compares the complaint outcomes for the local authority with the average outcome during the same period, the number and percentages of cases received in which an intervention has occurred, a breakdown of all code of conduct complaints and outcomes against councillors, and a breakdown of all code of conduct complaint outcomes against town and community councils. The Ombudsman received 20 complaints about Monmouthshire County Council, and I'm pleased to say that none of those were investigated by him. Whilst the overall number of complaints received relating to local authorities across Wales increased from 794 to 912, the Ombudsman has indicated that he's pleased that local authorities continue to work with his office to resolve many of the complaints at an early stage. This provides complainants with appropriate and timely remedies, avoiding the need for his office to fully investigate complaints. A summary of the complaints of maladministration or service failure received relating to the council is attached to the Ombudsman's letter. The Ombudsman goes on to say, and I'll read verbatim, that I am very grateful to the monitoring officer, who's sitting beside me, of the council in view of this position. He took a proactive approach and arranged a training session for the clerks of community councils, which gave an opportunity to talk about the code of conduct and our work. This event was an example of how local authority can work with its community and town councils to promote standards and raise awareness of codes of conduct. I'm keen to encourage local leadership and accountability in this matter in all authorities in Wales, and I intend to refer to the example set by your council in this regard as an exemplar of good practice. If I can add here, Monmouthshire Monmouthshire leads and others follow.
Thank you. Well, thanks for that. And it's interesting when you read the letter, or rather the fact sheet which accompanies it. It's quite amazing, really, how the average complaints are so consistent right through Wales. You know, it doesn't matter which authority you're looking at, like with one, there's one for us, one the average per population, and it's it's quite, so it's just a diverse area, a similar percentage of complaints. Annette, is there anything you want to share with us on any of that?
No, I think you've captured everything there. The Ombudsman asked that this be presented to you, and for any feedback that you wish to provide to him by the 31st of October. So
yeah,
no, I haven't got nothing else to add on that.
Okay, thanks Annette. Any colleagues, anybody got anything they want to add? No, I know Dimitri, you've got a question.
Yeah, it was about communication. If you look at the additional documents 2, you look at it broken down by department, waste and street services, communication with department, a complaint, highways, poor communications responses from the department, passenger transport, lack of communication with the department, development management, communication issues, community hubs, alleged incorrect information provided. Given that we're having a proactive stance now on digital infrastructure, can we have a proactive stance on communicating well with the public?
The way in which this council communicates is comprehensive. We've got press releases on a weekly basis with a website, and we go where the people are. And we use social media extensively. We use Facebook. We've got 12,000 Twitter accounts registered here. We engage through My App. There's 20,000 people registered there. We've introduced Monty, that's the chatbot, and indeed Progenda, following our example here, and they've introduced chatbot on the back of our system. We have the hubs. We're enhancing the hub at Caldicot. And there's a co-working area there. And we've recently introduced the micro hub at Gilwan, at the Gilwan Library. There are obviously huge amounts of communication between our council and members of the public. So far as communication with digital service, I can tell you now that so far as the website is concerned, with council tax accounts online, the website's presently being updated, and you'll be able to follow your payments to the council directly through the website. So there are developments there. With regard to contact and contact centres, the chatbot is a new innovation that we've used in order to attempt to communicate more closely with the members of the public. We employ 10 people at our contact centre down at Chepstow. There are approximately 1,000 telephone calls per week from that centre. Certainly during the amendment to the waste collection service, the communication was increased by 5-fold, and there would be some obvious delay because we're not going to employ another 40 people to answer the telephone. But all in all, we can always do better, and we're learning from our mistakes, and we'll certainly learn from the information referred to in the Ombudsman's report.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, when you list it all down in each one, yeah, you can make lots of stuff out of it. I mean, nobody's perfect at communication. We're always going to be striving to be better on communication, aren't we? But you'll never make everybody happy all the time. All we've got to do is strive to keep making improvements and being the best we can. I think, as you've described, we're exploring all avenues to try to improve our communication and make engagement with the council easier and more timely, and as with the bot, 24 hours a day. There we go. Penny?
I'd just like to add that, of course, we in one-to-ones as well. We're out and about in our wards from the members' point of view, but also there's communication through surgeries as well. So, and the fact that members are sometimes on the community council or town councils. So there are other ways of spreading the news as well, and being, the communication.
But people will always, people will be unsatisfied sometimes with the speed of response we as individual members get back to people, or sometimes the response to a specific question, or they may be complaint because they don't like the content of the the response. And we've all seen it, and we all we can pledge is to strive to do as well as we can, and we will keep doing that. Okay, so the recommendations on that report are as noted in 2122324, and I don't think I need to read all those out, but you can see them there on the report. Are we all happy to receive those? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, that's carried. Right, let's move on then to the Maintain Schools Partnership Agreement. Richard John.
Thank you very much. I'm asking members today to agree to the Statutory Partnership Agreement, which is a document between the local authority and our schools, and it sets out how we promote high standards, how we support our schools, and particularly those schools that give cause for concern, and the intervention measures that can be taken. It also sets out the division of responsibilities between schools and the local authority for health and safety matters and for school maintenance. This document has been quite some time in the making. It's been widely consulted on over an 8-month period. It's been through the Children and Young People Select Committee on 2 occasions, in January 2019 and most recently in July. And a number of changes have been made as a result of the consultation process that the document's been through. It's also been through the Joint Advisory Group, which is our consultative body between the local authority and the trade unions. It's been widely consulted on with head teachers and with school governors. I'd like to thank officers for their work on this, but I'd also like to pay particular tribute to Martin Grocott, who was, through most of the development of this document, was chair of the Children and Young People Select Committee. And I just want to put on record our thanks to him for his involvement in the development of this document and the liaison that he provided between school governors and others through his role as chair of that scrutiny committee.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Yeah, echo that. Perhaps Dimitri, you can take that back as well to Martin to share that we appreciate his involvement in this, and it's great that we've got a formal partnership agreement. I mean, something which is solid, which all partners can know what to expect from each other and what we expect of each other as well. So, no, that's fine. Colleagues, anybody around? No. Any officers need to add anything? Will? No. Okay, so basically then the recommendation is that it's recommended that members agree to statutory partnership agreement. Are we all in favour of that? Thank you very much. Okay, in Phil's absence now, I'll try and do the W10 Windows 10 laptop replacement report. I think Sian's might, but if we need Sian, she can be here. She'll be here, okay. Right, so this report seeks funding for the replacement. Oh, just perfect timing. That's digital. I'm sure there's something to do with digital infrastructure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Good.
Welcome, Sian. Okay, yeah, so this report seeks funding for the replacement or upgrade of laptop PC stocks, bringing them up to the minimum of Windows 10 operating system and meeting our ICT network security requirements. You'll see that we own just over 1,900 workforce mobile devices, either laptops or tablets. Obviously fundamental to how we do our business. As we are, we operate under the Microsoft platform. Our laptops are built on Windows 10 and previously Windows 7 operating systems. And from January 2020, Microsoft will cease to support the Windows 7 operating system, and we will be unable to connect Windows 7 laptops to our network without compromising our cyber security. So obviously there's a need for us to upgrade those to accommodate Windows 10, and there's a cost to that, as we can see there. I know Sian can explain a little bit more perhaps why we're not going the next step to Windows 13 or something like that, or to make us content that Windows 10 won't be in the same situation as Windows 7 in a 12 months time or something. So the recommendations are that Cabinet will approve the use of one-off capital or reserve funding of £239,300 to ensure that our workforce and site equipment stocks meet the minimum required security standards of Windows 10 operating systems by January 2020. And that the Cabinet approves a one-off top-up of the central equipment budget of £67,000 to cater for normal operational equipment renewals for the remainder of the financial year. And the other recommendation in 2.3 is that the Cabinet acknowledges the increase in pressure on the central equipment budget resulting from an increase in overall devices as well as a reduction in laptop lifespan. In order to address this, Cabinet is asked to endorse this pressure being considered as part of the forthcoming annual budget setting process. So those were the recommendations. Sian, I'm sure you want to talk to this a little, so I'll hand over to you.
Right. On your question about Windows 13 and Windows 10, the current operating system is Windows 10. There's no intention to go any further at the moment.
Oh, right.
I think the reference to Windows 13 is for server replacement rather than laptop replacement.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, inevitably there'll come a point when the Windows 10 laptop needs to be replaced by some sort of system that comes along in the future, but not at the moment.
Not for the time being, no.
We had this situation a few years back when we replaced the Windows XP machines.
Oh, yeah.
I think that it is critical that we do this replacement programme on an ongoing basis. We operate at the moment on the basis that if your laptop breaks, we'll replace it. If it's serviceable, we'll keep it on, because that's economic, that's the economic way of doing it. But I guess as technology changes, that they no longer have the lifespan that they used to have.
No.
And so it's inevitable that there's pressure on our laptop equipment budgets, and we can't make the essential security accreditation if we continue to connect our Windows 7 laptops up to the network.
That's a really fundamental point.
It is,
which,
absolutely.
we know that more so than anything. Yeah. No, that's fine.
Will this figure include the licensing fee for the new devices?
All of our laptops are received on an empty basis, they're just empty shells, and what actually goes on them is the licenses for Microsoft Office and all of the rest of the things you see on your laptop. It's not actually on the laptop itself, it's actually sat on our server in the SRS, and that's part of the licensing agreement. So we pay annually for 1900 licenses or whatever it is. So it doesn't make any difference to the actual laptop.
In theory then, the hardware should last a long time, shouldn't it? Because as long as it can cater for the new applications which are cloud-based or whatever. But it's unlikely that they won't have enough power, I suppose, to keep up with some of the
Yeah, that's essentially the problem. You know, if you're looking at my laptop, for instance, it's got 4 gig of power or whatever it is, and that's not enough to run certain graphics applications. And the internet is full of graphic-rich applications at the moment. So as time goes by, with the new technology coming in, it's just not able to cope with that sort of technology running through a very basic laptop. So we try and maintain a standard that suits everybody. And that standard means that we can support and we can maintain those laptops remotely from the SRS. We don't need to have a technician come along and visit you all the time. But there's a balance between paying an awful lot of money for equipment, the lifespan of the equipment, and also its ability to cope with the oncoming technology.
Yeah. And it's not in the interest of any manufacturer of computers to make them last forever, is it?
Well, no, it's the same as mobile phones and things like that. They do go out of contract, they do go to standard. The operating systems generally stay in for a lot longer. So the Windows 10 operating system is staying for a lot longer. But when they go out of date, then Microsoft will not support the vital sort of security updates and upgrades that it needs. There is an option to pay for extra support at a cost of around about £27 per device, but even that optional extra doesn't satisfy our security arrangements.
No. Thanks for taking us through that, Sharon. Okay, then to colleagues, anybody want to? No, anything? Right, it's pretty straightforward. Absolutely, you can see it. Security, if nothing else, is a key driver, but I understand, it's so fundamental to what we do. We've got to have the equipment. So recommendations in 2.1, then 2.1, the Cabinet approves the use of, I already went through all of that. So the recommendations as I went through earlier, can I take those on block, please? All in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, we'll move on now to resources, enabling a future-focused council, and this report is obviously Pete Davis's report, and is to consider proposals for the new resource directorate management team structure, a revised senior finance structure, and team restructures in human resources, HR, the digital program office, and the commercial and integrated landlord services team. There's a lot of information here. It's quite a complex restructure, very, very necessary. And I know something that Peter would be happy to take us through rather than me trying to crawl over it.
Pay rises, are we?
So they've all got an interest, or what?
I was going to say just before we start, only one of them had really an interest, but
Something personal.
I think in the current day and age, there's probably nothing wrong with being hypersensitive to these issues. So.
Okay. So Pete, can I invite you to just talk us through this, please, and that'll be welcome.
And thank you, Leader. Peter Davis, Chief Officer for Resources, and the restructure proposals that I'm looking to bring forward and through Cabinet today, as the leaders just touched on, are quite significant. They stretch out and they impact many parts of the Directorate. Not just at a team level, but at a senior level as well. The report is comprehensive. I'm not looking to actually wade through the detail today, and I don't think that's necessary. I'd expect Cabinet members to have digested the report more fully. But I think it's important to sort of highlight here, beyond, I guess, the purpose of the report that the leaders just referred to, some of the more the formal purpose of the report, which is, yes, establishing a directorate management team. It is looking to put team structures in place, but beyond that, core purpose here is to ensure that across the directorate we have the capacity and the capability to support the wider organisation, yourselves and members, in further and solve obviously the corporate plan and obviously all the endeavours, challenges and opportunities that we've got facing us going forward. I guess the Directorate has, to this point, and certainly over the few years that it's been, newly formed as a Directorate, it has bootstrapped itself a little, and probably more so of late. We've had a lot of temporary arrangements in place, a lot of honoraria for staff who have taken on additional responsibility, and obviously we've had to work our budgets very hard in order to accommodate all of that. And again, to continue to support the council and obviously directorates across the board. So today really is looking to actually, on the one hand, formalise some of that and to make permanent some of those temporary arrangements. And clearly there will be an increase in the permanent headcount as a consequence of some of those temporary posts being made permanent. Further to that, we've got situations where we are reliant or have been reliant on third-party spend. We've actually been, particularly for example in property services, where we've over time reduced our core staffing model, and probably too much. Our reflections of late is that we actually need to reverse that trend somewhat and actually look to actually grow that. And place a lesser reliance, and that's something that we've discussed in the chamber in terms of third-party spend, consultants, etc. Looking to lessen our exposure on that and actually to internalise some of that resource. And again, that brings with it some additionality in terms of headcount. And further to that, there are, and again, this is the equally important part in supporting the organisation. We've got a lot of challenges going forward. Our medium-term financial plan, which is soon to be brought through Cabinet in the coming weeks. Lots of financial challenges, lots of demand pressures. I know, Leader, you talk often about our staff being our most significant resource. And you will see through the proposals that we are looking to just make sure that we've got robust resources in place within the teams to be able to support the organisation on the one hand digitally and in its endeavours, equally from a HR perspective in terms of the importance around well-being of our colleagues, making sure we've got good succession planning and workforce planning arrangements in place. The ask of directorates of chief officers on me and my teams is that we actually need a greater level of support. So we are responding to that. It is not just corporately with regards to HR, equally schools feature in that as well. And schools themselves are placing those demands on us as well. So on the one hand, yes, and the report does talk to a net increase in headcount. I sort of touched on the reasoning and rationale around that. It would be remiss of me, I think, just to take the opportunity just to touch on and beyond, I guess, the team restructures. Touching on here the likes of our commercial and integrated landlord services, so maybe more familiar to most as being estates and property services. yes, we are looking to inbuild some additional capacity where it is absolutely needed. You know, we're not being frivolous here. We are responding to where there is absolute need. So, you know, there is a level of investment in terms of some of our markets capability, because that is absolutely needed. Equally, in terms of some of the deficiencies we've had around health and safety, and based on some recent recommendations we've had brought back to us. So we are, you know, needing to respond to that and to put capability in place around that. Beyond that, really, and again, remiss of me really not to just mention, I guess, the late passing of Joy Robson. We know that that post has been held vacant for you know, quite a period of time, and we needed to let that time to pass for us to be able to consider what the most appropriate form and structure needed to be around our senior finance arrangements. I will come back to that in a moment, but suffice to say that you know, there is potentially some ongoing considerations around some aspects of that part of the senior structure. I'll come back to that in a moment. The proposals as a package are bringing forward a saving of £32,000, which on the one hand is well, it's good. You know, there is on the one hand a level of obviously investment in additional capacity, but clearly a funding package has had to be put together to be able to deal with that. It is made up, I guess, of us being able to release some of the budgets that we've had in place to honour the temporary arrangements that we've had in place. Furthermore, where we are looking to enhance our capabilities, for example, around some of our commercial and development activity, or around where we are providing extensive support into the capital programme, for example, Band B. We are looking to charge on that staff cost and attach it to those investments, those developments, or those programs of work. So part of the funding is coming in through that. And yes, noting, I think, one of your questions, Dimitri, just in terms of, yes, commercial income does feature as one aspect of
main component.
It's not the main component there. It represents about a quarter of the funding package. And I've had to take quite a degree of care around that in making sure that we don't extend ourselves too much. So making sure that where we are placing a reliance on income and commercial income, that we are being prudent around that. But suffice to say, that you know, structures evolve over time, and particularly in a commercial environment, you react and respond accordingly. So, you know, there will be review points as we go forward, particularly with our development and our commercial activity. You know, we will grow our capacity and capability to respond so that we are well equipped. And again, we don't have recourse to go out to the market and to incur, you know, significant and expensive fees in terms of with due diligence and advisors. You know, we want to at least inbuild some of that capability. But clearly, if things don't fly, then clearly we will review that in time. And if we need to withdraw and pull back, then, you know, we will. Beyond the £32,000 of savings for that are modelled in for the first year, we are looking to honour a commitment to bring forward further savings in the second and third year. You know, that is an important commitment. You know, I don't fail to recognise obviously the wider challenges that we have as part of the medium-term financial plan. You know, and the contribution that equally that you know, the Resources Directorate has to make to that. And clearly, you know, it will be my desire, obviously, with my team, to make sure that we outperform that. So, you know, that's a hugely important part to it. It's useful to just touch on one of the specific recommendations. I am asking for delegated authority here as one of the recommendations to both myself as Chief Officer and to Phil as Cabinet Member for Resources, such that we can look to finalise the restructure proposals beyond any decision of Cabinet, and to make any adjustments that are deemed necessary. Clearly, it would only be a case where there would be a material change that we would be required to come back into Cabinet. But if changes weren't deemed to be material, then I could obviously look to operate with those flexibilities. And the reason I just touch on that is that in terms of staff and union consultation, which is vitally important, the restructure proposals, they are multifaceted. There are various components to it, as I've discussed, and each manager is taking forward each of those restructures, in isolation. They are undertaking all the necessary staff consultation and union consultation on those, and they are at slightly different stages. So I guess through the delegated responsibility, we'll be looking to take, to consider those bit by bit. The final point, I guess, I just want to touch on really is in and around the senior leadership around the finance function, and I guess reflections further on the best design around that. So clearly with the head of finance section 151 role, which is very, very closely aligned in the restructure proposals to Joy's former role, that's a given. We clearly understand, there is quite a pressing need. I know I've been acting section 151 for quite some time, but there is a pressing need for us to actually get that role in place. It's a key senior role within this organisation. But the report clearly also outlines the actual need around our project finance capabilities. It's something which we have, again, using that word I used earlier, bootstrapped over recent years. And we've had to pull on people in existing roles to assist us in taking forward some of our significant projects and programmes of work. My proposals as they stand look to build some capability around that. I think my reflections are one around that. I think what I would like to do is to ensure that we appoint the Section 151 officer and head of finance role, and then at that point actually take some consideration of how we best look to incorporate that project finance capability. So all I'm asking for from Cabinet really from today, specifically in regard to that, is just so that their consent really to be able to look at that in due course, and again through the delegated responsibility, make the necessary adjustments and changes. But it's important to say that the option that is currently in play in the report, that is the most costly option at the moment. It does contain a proposal around putting in place an additional head of service role, a head of project finance. That is the most costly role. That is the most costly option, and I have made that decision on the basis of prudence. Clearly, if through discussion with the subsequent appointment of the Section 151, another option comes to the fore, I can only see that as being a less costly option. So clearly, through the decision I'm looking to secure through Cabinet, it would at least put all the resource in place to move forward.
Thank you, Peter. I recognise a huge amount of work on here. This is a significant piece of work that you needed to do to make sure this organisation is fit for purpose in all of its facets and the directions it's got to take. And I acknowledge that last recommendation, which delegates them permissions to you in consultation with Phil to do these as you see fit, and to amend them unless it's material, then they'll come back here. Indeed, actually, as I said at previous meetings, management, this is stuff which is, which you as senior officers are charged to do, but with this one, obviously the significance of it, because significant headcount. I'm pleased that the finances bring that in with savings, and you've explained how that comes about. And so, it's a positive report which we've been looking forward to, and I think this organisation has needed for a long time. Colleagues, anybody want to come in? No. Okay.
Leader, can I just a slight matter of housekeeping? There was a very minor oversight in terms of version control on the report. Recommendation 2.8 of the report shouldn't actually exist. Shouldn't exist. Okay. As to how that is dealt with, but that recommendation needs to be removed in the decision.
Okay. Well, I'll take us to Dimitri. Your question, I think, was answered by Peter, wasn't it, as through the report, or do you want to add to it?
In what he just said, you just alluded to, if I may, if health and safety concerns. Could you just give me a bit more detail about that?
When I use the word concern, it's really around ensuring that we have sufficient both capacity and capability and expertise, certainly within the Resources Directorate. Obviously, health and safety, responsibilities span the organisation widely. With regards to assets, and specifically with regards to property services, the way that the structures have evolved, and due to staffing losses, staff turnover, our capabilities have probably been weakened of late. That's not saying that we're not fulfilling our absolute requirements. That's being dealt with. However, we've had to reflect and respond in the new structures to making sure that capability is in place and in place fully. So it is more around that.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Well, there's such a significant recommendations here, and we have got them. I'm going to take them en bloc, but I hear what you say about 2.8. We'll remove 2.8 from the block, so take them en bloc. But I will emphasise the 2.1.1, just the last one there. The Chief Officer of Resources proceed with the implementation of the new structure, and make any amendments that might become apparent during the process in consultation with a cabinet member for Resources. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. That's great. Could we invite Francis at least back in?
He's probably in Brussels, isn't he?
Thanks for that, Pete. Thank you. Anybody can come back in if they want to.
Just check that the ayes had it. The ayes.
Welcome back, folks. Okay, we're on to the last item of the agenda, and that's Brexit preparedness, and a difficult topic for us because it's changing as we speak. I'm sure something's happened in the last 5 minutes, but obviously, as a prudent council, a lot of work has been going on around preparedness at all levels within the council, within WLJ, within Wales Government, and in many areas, and obviously preparing for various scenarios. Obviously, no deal presents additional things that we will need to be prepared for. This is for information only, this report, and I know that Francis has been heavily involved with this, obviously the author of the report, and Francis, do you want to give us an overview as you see it with our position within the preparedness agenda?
Thank you, Francis O'Brien, Chief Officer Enterprise. As we set out in the report, we are modelling our risks from the perspective of the worst case scenario being based on a no-deal Brexit.
Yeah.
As you rightly say, the circumstances are changing. What feels like a minute-by-minute basis at the moment is very difficult to model out what those risks look like and how they could impact upon us. But we work on the basis that a no-deal Brexit causes the greatest levels of uncertainty and therefore the greatest level of risks associated with that. We've reviewed our internal risk register. We'll continue to do that at a local level and feed into the various mechanisms that are already in place with regards to LRF, which is Local Resilience Forum, and into the national mechanisms with Welsh Government and UK Government as and when required. With regard to potential implications at a local level, I think the greatest risks that we're identifying at the moment are the uncertainty that we are facing with regards to potential risks around financial risks, things like the political dynamic changing and what that could or couldn't mean for us, and specifically the impact it could have upon the agricultural sector and our rural communities. So what we're doing with that is looking at what we can put in place for additional support for the farming community and farming sector. So we've updated our Monmouthshire Biz website, so there is a dedicated page on there for Brexit and for the agricultural sector. And we're also looking at how we can provide additional support and advice to the community. A lot of our work and role is signposting and signposting people to relevant information where it's available, because there is a lot of information out there, and keeping the relevant information up to date. But we're also ensuring that in terms of the Brexit working group and officer working group, that we're understanding what the implications could be for us in terms of impact upon council services. So those are things that we'll continue to review and monitor as the weeks pass and time goes on.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. And I know there's a lot of work going on, and we know we have to look at every angle, because we don't know. Perhaps if the worst situation arose, we still might not be facing all of the issues that could come forward, food security and things like that. We don't know what that might mean, but we have to be prepared for it. It's interesting, talking about water quality, and I hope water quality wouldn't be affected if one way or another, but we have to prepare and make sure that we're covered in all that in all of those areas. WLGA are also briefing councils regularly, and I will be meeting with WLGA on a regular basis as well, as we have been to date. Political leaders in the WLGA come together to receive information and keep us up to speed. So yeah, we just got to do the best we can, and of course, and on top of all of this preparedness here, we're going to have to be prepared for the more immediate issues of dealing with fallout from the debate at general election, possibly, and all of the other implications which fall along with that. The unrest. Does the spending review announced today, and the opportunities and monies which are going to flow to us through that, does that get undone with a new government and or whatever, and then we suddenly got no money again or whatever? So the uncertainties are big around all of this debate, one way or another. Colleagues, anybody? I'm sure this is a debate which we could spend all day on, but colleagues, do you want to add anything? No, I know, Dimitri, you've got a question.
Yeah, it was about, because I realise we're a kind of signposting organisation, but given our rurality, we can input key data and have a better understanding of how it's going to affect Monmouthshire than the WLGA. So I pulled figures from the NUF and correlated with data we have on our farms. And if the basic payment scheme finishes, which is in 2021, I believe, could cost Monmouthshire farmers £6 million per year. Have we thought about that? That is a hell of a money being sucked out of our economy. Is that even on our radar? Was that going to be on the risk register, given the fundamental nature of it, of our community?
I mean, well, I think we have to. We've been given reassurances from all parties, all political parties, that the agricultural community will be supported in the event of the single farm payments going. There will be how that will be supported. We know that Wales government are currently consulting on their second draft of their plans.
It's a good point, because the English system has been announced, and it's a 10% cut for farmers. We're, like I say, we're under the consultation at the moment. There's some concern within the NFU and the FUW about what has been proposed from Wales government at the moment as a replacement for the current single farm payment structure, because it's going to really threaten what's being suggested now. Could threaten a lot of the old farmers who to do things in a traditional way. We're talking about Monmouthshire and Wales, and but we've had reassurances from UK government that in the event that European funding doesn't flow through to support farmers, that will equal amounts will flow through to Wales government. I know Wales government want continuous reassurance of that, and as we all do, because it is a really a key issue. I just hope that the Wales government replacement system,
be it the money flows, can look at that sustainable future of farmers and help those farmers, many of them who will be struggling anyway in any normal year, help them through that period, because they are the fabric of this county, this country. They hold Wales together in many ways and create the beautiful place we have. And when that's ignored or it's not understood by many, that's when we see some significant changes. So I think we all agree with the basis of your concern that something needs to be in place. I don't think we as a county in a position to plan to subsidise farmers if there was no money coming from the lobby. I'm a member of the NFU. I'm a past member of FUW, a member of the WLJ. I've got an interest in this. I just thought I'm a farmer, and I benefit from single farm payment. I've been announced I'm a beneficiary of single farm payment. I don't know if I can last till 2022. I don't know.
You could argue everybody's got an interest because we all eat.
Yeah, you've all got to eat. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I am, if a worst comes to worst, of food security, this is tongue in cheek, food security gets really desperate. I've got enough cattle to feed Caldercock for a little while anyway.
Could I just amplify some of Francis' points and actually thank Francis and Kat because they've been doing a sterling job on our collective behalf for several months now. It may not feel like it, but relative to the rest of Wales, Monmouthshire as a county is seen as a relatively low risk area for Brexit. It doesn't feel like that to me most days, but that's the product of some quite significant work that's been commissioned by Welsh Government from third parties. It won't surprise you, certainly those of you that know our agricultural community, that we're talking large about livestock here.
Yeah.
So it's actually livestock movements that probably come into the sharpest relief for us. And just yesterday we were having some conversations about, whether what one of the things that the wider Gwent area needs to look at is whether we're sufficiently served with animal welfare officers and that sort of professional capacity. Should we start to see particular issues at the ports? It's very lucky actually not to have a port in Monmouthshire. I wish those do have ports well, but I'm glad that we don't have a port at this moment in time. We're not a heavy manufacturing county. We do lots of manufacturing, but relative to other places, we don't have large 1,000-person plus foreign-owned entities dotting our landscape in the way that some do. So that's probably a good thing. But to give you a sense of the pace that things are moving, I think it's fair to say that we saw a lull for several months. There was a real sense of Brexit fatigue. I think actually that still exists in the population today, probably outside of Westminster, where fatigue is being driven by something more profound. But there are two significant events taking place. What day are we on? Tomorrow? Yeah, we're hosting one here. There's one taking place in Cardiff. Local government in the round in Wales is building to quite an important input at the Partnership Council in early October from memory. And again, a third party has been commissioned by Welsh Government to a degree independently assess the state of preparedness of each and every one of the 22 councils. But really they're trying to surface meta issues actually, because you can't deal with Brexit however it comes times 22. We're only a small principality at the end of the day, and we need to be working out how we can lean on each other. So as you say, the dynamics are really interesting. I think, Leader, you opened up with your comment about what it might mean for monies and things. Just while we've been sat here today, the Chancellor's announced £600 million for Wales Government, clean money. Well, that's the way the government currently is. Who really knows what could happen?
Summer election, it'll stay the same.
We've got we've got to set a budget sometime soon. The consequences of all of this, they materialise in a multifaceted sort of directions. But I think the comment that you made in response to Councillor Petruni is right in terms of the farming community. There are strong levels of assurance being offered by the Wales government. I think we have to take them for what they are. And I think these Brexit updates will be an absolute feature of all of your cabinets from this point onwards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conscious this is part of the cabinet pack, and I know all members have access to it, but not all members do look at it. I think perhaps we ought to circulate this as an information sheet to all members, or have it up on the internet or something.
I think the quality of the documentation and the leadership of Kath and Francis that we've developed, it's a question of signposting.
Yeah.
I think members probably to what we have. We have enough information to form a cogent picture of the situation as we currently understand it. That may move again on us.
Okay, so thanks again, Francis. Thank you, Paul. Okay, so it's only the recommendation is only to notice is for information only, so we're all in favour of that, obviously. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Can I thank you all for your contributions and look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.